Gather round and welcome back to this special semifinal recap edition of Todd Talks College Football and the 5 thoughts on this week in college football. And folks, what a couple days we saw here in the semifinals. We had a really exciting instant classic here on Thursday night between Miami and Ole Miss. Turned out to be just a barn burner. 31-27. We're going to get into that here in this show for a few minutes. And we also had the absolute smackdown of the century here with Indiana absolutely dominating Oregon there. 56-22 in that football game, and it wasn't even that close, folks. So we're going to break all of that down here over the next, let's call it 17 or so minutes and see where we're at. Get not a peek into this championship game because we're going to break that down here in a couple of days as we get closer to that and we get to review what we saw, think about it, and then anticipate what we're going to see in Miami in the battle of Indiana and Miami. So let's sit back, grab a drink, and let's talk about these two semifinal games. Well, let's start at that Fiesta Bowl on Thursday night, and we did see a heck of a game, kind of a little bit of a story of two halves, I guess you can say in some ways, and really a fourth quarter that was just built with excitement and electricity there out in Arizona. So we had Miami end up holding off Ole Miss 31-27 in this game, and let's just kind of walk through what we saw as we progressed through this game. It started out, Ole Miss had the ball, and Miami came out and absolutely pummeled Trinidad Chambliss on that first drive, forcing the sack and a quick punt there. Miami then gets the ball, and they have quite the drive here for their first drive of the game. It was a 13-play, 44-yard drive that ended up with the field goal to take a 3-0 lead. I mean, think about that. 13 plays for 44 yards. So this thing came down to a play call that I really didn't love here by Mario Cristobal. They were, kind of moving the ball at 3 to 5 yard chunks here. They get in this situation at 3rd and 3. And instead of just, looking at this as 2-down territory and just blasting Fletcher there for 2 runs, they bring Malachi Toney into this Malley Cat, they like to call it down there at Florida or Miami of Florida. And it ends up not going anywhere, completely blowing it up. 3 technique inside player just blew up the guard on that. I guess that would have been on the left side of Miami's offensive line, and just absolutely took Malachi down for a no loss or a no gain on that play, forcing the field goal there. I really feel like the offensive coaching staff kind of out-thunked themselves there with that play. I mean, they were traditionally just beating Ole Miss up for 3 to 5 yard chunks, like I said earlier, and then to go with this wildcat in this formation, and I just didn't like the play call. But anyways, they end up getting the field goal. We go into the second quarter here. Ole Miss then both teams exchange punts. We go into the second quarter here. Ole Miss gets the ball in first play of the second quarter. We get a 73-yard rush here by Keywan Lacey to score a touchdown, make this thing 7-3 Ole Miss, and it looks like, oh boy, here we go. You'll notice in that run, Keywan Lacey kind of tweaked a hamstring there and actually left for the rest of that half. In the first half after that big run, we then had Miami come back with the 15-play, 75-yard drive, just a masterpiece of 15 plays, 75 yards, ends up scoring a touchdown there, taking the lead at 10-7. Then you have Ole Miss come back, and they get in field goal range and able to tie the football game up at 10-all. Miami immediately storms back with a quick 5-play 75-yard drive. So we went from a 15-play 75-yard drive, the touchdown prior for Miami, to a 5-play 75-yard touchdown drive there. Ole Miss, and actually the touchdown happened so quickly that Ole Miss actually had a chance at the end of the half to get the ball back, and was able to muster a field goal out of that, and cutting this thing to 17-13 at halftime. But it really felt like, watching the game, it really felt like Miami dominated the first half, to just walk off the field with a 4-point lead there at halftime. It didn't feel like a 4-point game, watching the game, but the scoreboard said it was. So we come out in the third quarter here. We get both teams end up missing field goals on their first drives of the third quarter. The Ole Miss kicker banked it or bounced it or doinked it off the upright. The thing about what I didn't like in Miami's first drive of the third quarter, so they come out at halftime, they get the ball, and they're having a great drive here. And again, this is another area just like the first drive of the first half. I really think the offensive coaching staff, again, outthunk themselves. And, we have this situation where Miami's moving the ball, and they get this big, massive run, 19-yard run. Many of you will remember it. Turned into just a scrum, really, a rugby scrum down the middle of the field with 19 guys on the play for 19 yards. But Miami, big run, felt like the physicality of Miami was taking over the game for sure right there. And what does Miami do? They come back with the silly flea flicker on the next play, first down, and it ends up going for a 12-yard loss. So you got this 19-yard gain, big play. Felt like the momentum, felt like the physicality was in Miami's side. It felt like everything. Ole Miss just didn't have the defense, and you come back with the flea flicker. I just don't understand it. Fletcher was running hard. I just don't know why the play call was that. Those two play calls on those two drives, I'm still questioning what they were thinking there. So anyways, they end up missing the field goal on that drive. And like I said, we've already talked about Ole Miss missed their field goal by doinking it. Then the next drive, this is where we see, I don't know that I would say this is Carson Beck's fault, but Carson Beck had that ball tipped up in the air, which then was intercepted by Ole Miss. So I wouldn't say that's a typical Carson Beck interception in that situation. I think that was just an unlucky bounce and a Ole Miss player being in the right position at the right time to make that interception. Then Ole Miss converts off of that, getting this thing to 17-16. Miami still winning. Then we get to the next drive, and it feels like Ole Miss really, really needs a defensive stop to get this game. That even on the interception that Carson Beck had, Miami was moving the ball a little bit there. So we get into the fourth, and Ole Miss's D does stand up, and they force a punt here by Miami with the score at 17-16. And Ole Miss goes down and gets that field goal off of that one. And you kind of seeing a little trend here of why Ole Miss is the loser in this game. They settled for too many field goal opportunities in this game. They needed to convert a touchdown off of the interception, and they just couldn't do it. So it's 19-17 here. Miami comes back out with a touchdown drive, making this game 24-19. Ole Miss then comes back and answers immediately with a touchdown drive and a 2-point conversion to extend the lead to 27-24. And then we saw what was the drive of the day. That was, Carson Beck's final drive here. of the game. That 15 play, 75-yard drive. Sound familiar? It feels like we just had one of these earlier in the game, and we did. Again, very similar type of drive, taking what they give you, taking, exactly, piece and chunking it, doing whatever you need to do to get it. Now, we did have a 3rd and 8 on this drive early in the drive around the Miami, I think it was around 39-yard line, somewhere in that range right there. We had 3rd and 8, and we had a pass down the left side of the field, and we got Ole Miss called on a face mask on that defender on that play, and ends up giving Miami a first down there on that 3rd and 8. It was a face mask, no question about it. We also got to look at this drive. We had a 3rd and 10 situation here, and Carson Beck gets a 17-yard pass on that 3rd and 10 to continue that drive. And then it all culminates there with the 3-yard Carson Beck touchdown run to get this thing to 31-27, giving Ole Miss just little 20 seconds left on the clock to try to get a touchdown here to win this football game and give it to Trinidad Chambliss. He makes 2 passes that gets him in the vicinity to make a pass to the end zone, which ultimately falls incomplete. There's a lot of scuffle out there on the internet whether that should have been pass interference or not. They did not call pass interference on the field. I think it's hard on a desperation throw on the last play of the game in that kind of situation to get pass interference. Even if they would have got the pass interference, doesn't mean they would have scored. They still would have had a 1st and 25 basically to score, because they would have needed a one untimed down play to score a touchdown. Could have happened. You never know. I've seen it, crazier things before, but I don't think it was a situation where I think the no call was probably the right call there. Beck ended up with 268 yards throwing the football, 2 TDs. He did have the interception, which I'm going to say is really not his fault there in that particular instance. He had the rushing TD. We had Mark Fletcher run for 133 yards in this football game. Did not score a touchdown, but did have quite a good day running. Keelan Marion led the receiving corps with 114 yards there for Miami and a TD. And Malachi Toney brought up with 81 yards and a TD there receiving the football. Trinidad Chambliss had a good game at 277 yards and a TD. I really think the loss of Kewan Lacey after the big run, he did come back in the second half and have some absolutely tremendous short yardage runs, and they needed them. Like, they really needed these runs, and he did show grit and determination coming back in to the game, even though you can clearly tell he was hurt, and getting these critical first downs there for Ole Miss to keep him in the game. So, I mean, great effort by Kewan Lacey, quite the player there. It's interesting because the Ole Miss defense, they definitely pressured Carson Beck into 4 sacks in this football game, and the Miami defense did not. I mean, Miami only had 1 sack in this game. Trinidad Chambliss played relatively clean here. There was some holding occurring for sure, Miami fans. I don't disagree. It was a Big Ten ref. Now you know what it feels like to be Ohio State in the Big Ten. They don't ever get holding calls, in those situations. But overall, again, one of the most exciting playoff games that we've had in the 2 years of the 12 team playoff so far, and absolutely masterpiece. Definitely an instant classic. Nothing that Ole Miss did in this game, they shouldn't be hanging their heads. This was an absolute great effort by them, considering everything that they were up against with the coaching staff not all being there for this game like it was in the last game, minus the lane. But overall, just an absolutely exciting classic football game. Miami moves on to Miami, Hard Rock Stadium, playing at home for the national championship game. And who are they going to play? Well, let's check it out next. Let's move down to the Peach Bowl there, where we saw Indiana absolutely demolish Oregon here, 56-22. We saw this really start on literally the first play of the game. Dante Moore gets a pick six there. Indiana scores 7-0 before you know it. Oregon comes back, though, with a very nice drive on their next drive, 14 plays, 75 yards to tie this thing up at 7 apiece. Fernando finally gets out on the field there after basically sitting on the bench for the first half of the first quarter there, comes out with his own drive at 11 plays, 75 yards there to advance Indiana's lead to 14-7. They start out the second quarter exchanging punts, both teams. So it looks like, okay, everyone's kind of settled down, and we're going to start to see a football game here at 14-7. And then we see the absolute meltdown of the second quarter start here, and that starts with Oregon's one-play fumble at the 3-yard line here after the punt. Indiana pinned Oregon deep, and boom, we had a one-play fumble, 3-yard line, boom, Indiana scores. 2 plays later to make it 21-7. Like, okay, we've got Oregon, who's made 2 mistakes now with the pick six and the fumble, giving up 14 points to Indiana just like that. The next series, Oregon comes out. You feel like they really, really need to score here to get this thing to 21-14. They can't do it. They're 5 plays in a punt. And boom, we get Indiana coming back with a 4-play, 61-yard, bing, bang, boom, great pass down the middle for the touchdown to make this thing 28-7. And then, of course, what do we get again? Oregon gets the ball back, and this is now an absolutely must-score situation at 28-7. But no, we get another massive mistake again. Another fumble. This time Dante Moore hits the, I guess his player's shoulder pad, knocks the ball out there on that RPO. Indiana recovers inside, basically the 20-yard line. They go 6 plays and score a touchdown there to make this thing 35-7. Oregon did get the ball with enough time to get into field goal range and ultimately misses the field goal. Sappington just couldn't make it there either. So we go into halftime 35-7. And honestly, at this point, you're looking at Dante Moore, and the poor guy can't really he's not processing anything out there on the field very fast. Everything is just way too fast for him. He just isn't seeing anything, and Indiana is just picking him apart. Again, like I said, 3 turnovers led to 3 touchdowns in a matter of seconds there out on the field, probably less than a minute and a half of playing time. Indiana was able to score after these turnovers. They come out in the second half, and unfortunately for Oregon, Indiana has the ball coming out 35-7. And, of course, what do? They do what they always do. They go on an 11-play, 75-yard drive, taking this thing up 42-7. Oregon then comes back with a really nice drive of their own, kind of like they started the first drive after the interception in the first quarter. They have a 2-play, 75-yard drive. And these are really the 2 drives, in the most part, that Oregon had in the game, which would have been their first drive after the pick six in the first, and then this 2-play, 75-yard drive culminating in that big run, making it 42-15. They did get the 2-point conversion. They then come back. They get a stop against Indiana. At this point, there's no way they're coming back, but at least they're trying a little bit here. And, of course, what happens? They get the blocked punt. Bam. And this thing now is 49-15, and it just feels like nothing that Oregon can do can go right for them. Both teams then exchanged touchdowns there later in the fourth quarter to make this game 56-22 final there. And some of the big takeaways for me in this game is, I told you going into this game and my prediction on this, I felt like after rewatching the Oregon-Texas Tech game in the quarterfinal round, I just felt like Oregon made way too many mistakes in that game, left too many points out on the field, didn't have a very, even though Dante Moore had okay stats, I just felt like he was missing and not seeing the field. And again, that all culminated into more of that here against a better team than Texas Tech, and that's Indiana. And it even, got out of control really fast here in the second quarter for Oregon. But I just felt like going into this game, Oregon was going to make too many mistakes, and that clearly happened here. It just, there's nothing they can do. It just was a downhill shit pile rolling on them, and they just couldn't stop it. Again, they played okay, I guess, for a drive or two in this game, but it just doesn't feel like Dante Moore. Let me tell you, I don't think that anybody looking at Dante Moore as a first-round pick in the NFL draft is going to be happy with what they get. I just don't see his skill set yet. He probably needs another year in college to develop that and hone that skill set. He's a big kid. He does have a good arm, but he just doesn't see the field very well. There was a play in this game where he did take a sack, and he had a wide open receiver. He had the time to throw the ball. He held the ball. Receiver was wide open, had the cornerback's hips switched and everything. Couldn't get the ball out of his hand, ended up eating a sack on that. It just, again, wasn't a great game for Oregon by any means. Now, this is 2 years in a row here that Oregon has played against Ohio State last year and got smacked around in the first half just as badly as in this game against Indiana. So what is Dan Lanning going to do here to stop this bleeding of playoff losses to Big Ten teams, his own conference by these kind of margins? Last year it was 42-21, and the game wasn't that close. And this year, and that was against Ohio State. This year against Indiana, it's 56-22, and the game wasn't that close either. So we're going to see how Dan Lanning can react to that, and then we're going to see how this team, Indiana, man, they just keep on rolling and they keep on going. And you think that just when the football gods say, hey, this is what should catch up with you after these types of scenarios, it just hasn't happened. They put themselves in great positions. They rarely make mistakes. I know Signetti said, some areas that he thought they made mistakes on, but overall, this team really doesn't make mistakes. So we'll see where this goes in Miami against the Hurricanes, and we should have a very, very interesting national championship game. Looking forward to seeing that. So anyways, we'll get that coming up soon, probably later in the week, Thursday or so. We'll put together that video for the preview edition of the national championship game and where I think this game's going to be won and lost, and who's going to win this game and be the national champions of the 2025 college football season. And that'll be an interesting show. So look for that probably Thursday, Friday, Saturday of this coming, next week here. We'll see how I get it together, how much research I can do. I'd like to go back and watch the games again, at least on, play-by-play, so I can, make sure I saw, that's what I did with Oregon, and I just saw the weaknesses of Oregon against Texas Tech that you might not have caught in the first round of it, but definitely caught in the replay, and it showed on the field yesterday against Indiana. So there we go. I told you going into this game, I had Miami and Indiana to win on my picks last time and for the semifinal games, and there we go. So my pick for the national championship will be more than likely accurate, so stick around for that and look for that soon. All right, there you go, folks. Again, we're almost winding down into a great, great football season. One game left to see what happens here. It's going to be fun. Thanks for joining. Hit the subscribe button. I'm really starting to build some following here, and I'd love to have you subscribe so you can keep up with the latest news. I'm working on a plan for the off season to keep the channel rolling and to keep some entertaining stuff coming out. We'll see how that all plays out, and I'll let you know what's coming up with that. But remember, gather round in ALTT. We'll see you soon.